In case you missed it, and let's be honest, you probably have, because not many people attend or watch these meetings, but the Georgia State Election Board has met over the past 2 days, and there's been a lot of dysfunction and craziness going on. Here's why it should matter to you, because the chaos and dysfunction that has been on full display over the last 2 days is really just a preview of what's to come next year when Republicans all across the country work to restrict access to voting and to call into question any results of the midterm elections that don't favor Republicans. So let's get into some of the stuff that's been going on over the last 2 days. The big news that came out of the last 2 days is that the election board voted to require Fulton County, where Atlanta is, to hold an additional meeting for certification following a special election that's going to be held next week. There'll be a special election for a state Senate seat. Last year, the Georgia State Election Board passed a rule that requires what's called a pre-certification meeting. And essentially the reason that they passed this rule is because the election deniers on the board, Dr. Janice Johnston, Janelle King, Rick Jeffries, they are in cahoots with election denial officials at the county level throughout the state. And one of the things that these officials has demanded is more access to materials after an election and before certification of those results, and more time to review those materials in their hunt for evidence of widespread election fraud. 2 counties in Georgia, very populous counties, Fulton and Cobb, had asked for a special waiver to not hold this meeting, which is called the pre-certification meeting. And the reason that they asked for that waiver is because there's a special election. We just got done with an election. They would have to have something like 4 to 6 meetings in the next month while Thanksgiving and Christmas and the holidays are coming up. So basically they said, we don't think we need these meetings. Can you let us skip these meetings that your rule is requiring us to have? In the case of Cobb County, a woman named Debbie Fisher was in charge of asking for this waiver on behalf of the county election board. Now, I've reported on Debbie Fisher before. She's an election denier, posts all kinds of insane conspiracy theory stuff on Facebook. So it's known that she's sort of in the tank for these unfounded theories of widespread election fraud that have been going around since 2020. The Georgia State Election Board, led by Johnston and King, went ahead and approved that waiver. So Cobb County doesn't have to have this special meeting. They did not approve the waiver for Fulton County, where Atlanta is. And there's a very simple reason for that, which is that Johnston and King and Jeffries and Republicans all throughout the state truly believe that Fulton County is like the epicenter of widespread election fraud. On Fulton County's election board is Julie Adams. Julie Adams is an election denier. She worked for Cleta Mitchell's Election Integrity Network. A lawsuit in which she demanded the right to refuse to certify election results last year was funded by the pro-Trump group America First Legal. And over again, she has demanded more and more materials and documents prior to certification of election results so that she can comb through them and find this elusive smoking gun to the theory of widespread election fraud. To recap, because Debbie Fisher is in Cobb County, where the election deniers on the election board don't think there's as much fraud as there is in Fulton County, they got the waiver. Fulton County didn't, because it's where Atlanta is, where a lot of black and Democratic voters are. So therefore, the election deniers on the election board think that's where all the fraud is. So that's sort of the big news that's come out of the last 2 days of state election board meetings. As is typical with these election board meetings, there was all sorts of interesting characters who showed up to speak at them. And there were lots of people who were invited to the meeting to present their findings on various subjects. All of the people who are typically invited to state election board meetings are election deniers. They include people like Garland Favorito, who is really the textbook definition of a tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist. He's also maybe a white supremacist to boot. And we know this because Garland Favorito published his own book in the 1990s called A Nation Betrayed. Here is the cover of the book if you want to get a sense of what's inside of it. And there's lots of insane stuff in this book. I've been slogging my way through it for the last few months in my spare time. I'm far from alone in knowing about Garland Favorito's book and the references that it makes in it to conspiracy theories about Jewish dominance of mainstream media. More specifically, where Favorito got those theories from. And where he got them from is from a pamphlet distributed by a company called National Vanguard Books, which was the publishing wing in the 1990s of a group called the National Alliance. That's a neo-Nazi organization. So in the 1990s, as Favorito is having his political awakening that turns him into the election conspiracy theorist that he is today, he's reading pamphlets from a neo-Nazi organization describing global Jewish conspiracy theories about media domination. Garland Favorito is one of the most frequent invitees to Georgia State Election Board meetings, including this week, where he once again discussed the discredited theory that Georgia's voting machines can be hacked and that hackers can manipulate individual votes.
I wanted you to see Clay's demo, which is about 3 minutes, of how he actually hacked a system. This is a authenticated copy of a Georgia server in court, Fulton County Superior Court, by an expert, one of the top experts in the country. So this is not DEF CON. This is not kids in Nevada hacking. So this is all court documentation, which what I like to show you. So do we need to flip a switch, Hope, to get the video audio on this? Or?
This is all just to give you a sense of who Dr. Janice Johnston and Janelle King are inviting to speak at these meetings, present their findings, and, as Garland Favorito has been involved in many times over the last 5 years, introduce and propose rules that will affect millions and millions of Georgia voters. Like I said, I'm not the only one who knows about Garland Favorito's insane beliefs and this book. A private citizen showed up at the meeting on Wednesday to remind the members of the state election board of exactly who Favorito is and who it is that they're inviting to speak at their meetings.
He writes, quote, "Jewish Americans have a high degree of control over American public opinion." The third presenter says he took this list of Jews from Who Rules America by National Vanguard Books. That is the publishing arm of a neo-Nazi organization. Who Rules America is a vile, racist screed. 2 full pages of this book is just him, the third presenter, sharing a list of Jews in the media that he copied from a neo-Nazi publication. And later today, he has the floor here for a special presentation. I encourage you to keep this book in mind when assessing the third presenter's credibility, both today and in the future. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Glad that's over with.
What you see there is the executive director of the state election board, who's been in his role since May, saying, oh, God, thank God that's over with. But that wasn't enough. He then went further and sort of bizarrely defended Favorito and said that, well, anybody can take something like that and take it out of context.
You know, in all fairness to all of us, including myself, I think any of us could take out of context something that any of us have said at any point in our life and misrepresent the other. And it's been my life experience that if you stay focused on the subject matter at hand, that's what we have to stay focused on. But people try to create smoke screens about what's not really being discussed. And we'll do better if we just stay focused on the matter at hand and not trying to reduce somebody's credibility to zero.
Look, I don't expect the executive director of the state election board, who's only been in that position since May, to be as up to speed about all of the insane back and forth machinations and things like Garland Favorito's book as the rest of us. But I do expect him, when someone shows up with that book explaining how Garland Favorito is citing a neo-Nazi organization in it, to not pseudo-defend Garland Favorito and say, well, we could be taking it out of context. I've reached out to the executive director to ask him what sort of context we could possibly be missing that would explain Garland Favorito citing the National Alliance in his book. I'll let you know if I hear back from him. But wait, that's not all, because Janice Johnston also took issue with the Atlanta Journal-Constitution and its reporting on a settlement that she just reached over a lawsuit that dealt with her trying to hide her communications and violating Georgia's open meetings laws as part of her work on the state election board. The story also noted that Dr. Johnston has been raising money as part of a legal defense fund, and helping her with that is a woman named Sally Grubbs, who is a well well-known election denier, GOP operative, who also has been introducing scores of rules over the last 4 years, many of which the state election board has passed. These rules affect every Georgia voter. So she's introducing and passing rules and then helping the vice chair of the state election board, Dr. Janice Johnston, raise money for her legal defense fund. We went all the way through Wednesday's meeting, a decent amount of normalcy, until we got towards the end and Dr. Johnston introduced a new agenda item in which she wanted to discuss the media. Here she is talking about the Atlanta Journal-Constitution's print subscribership.
But I'll ask Mr. Groves. He's a reporter for the AJC. Mr. Groves, do you know how many subscribers the AJC had in 2005? 630,000. Do you know how many print subscribers the AJC has now? 40,000. Total subscribers for the AJC, does anybody know? 115,000. And they're going out of print. Do you think it's because of the writing or the content, Mr. Groves?
This is the second time in as many months that Johnston has singled out a reporter from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution and effectively demanded that they get up to the microphone to answer her questions about their reporting. Now, just to be clear, because I'm a reporter also, and I also report on the Georgia State Election Board quite often, Dr. Johnston has been provided every opportunity to answer questions, not just for my stories, but I'm sure for all of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution stories as well. And she routinely just doesn't answer those questions or sidesteps them. For instance, in Thursday's meeting, which was held on Zoom, where Johnston led the charge in forcing Fulton County to have this extra meeting so that Julie Adams can root around for evidence of election fraud, Adams was speaking when Johnston's phone rang, and her phone announced that the person calling was Mark Davis.
We're not allowed to use phone, and we're not allowed to get copies of anything, and we can't get anything electronically.
Mark or Mark Davis?
So the problem with this is
Mark Davis is a self-described data analyst, a political operative, and a huge election denier who has challenged the voter registrations of tens of thousands of Georgians over the last few years. He basically alleges that there are hundreds of thousands of Georgians who are illegally voting because they haven't properly updated their addresses. And as a result, has sent complaints to the Secretary of State about 97,000 of those people who he says don't have correct addresses tied to their voter registration. Now, last month, Davis was invited to a blue ribbon committee hearing, and he dropped a little interesting tidbit, which is going to be fleshed out more in a story that I have coming out for The Guardian about how he's been speaking with the Justice Department about his investigative findings. So I thought it was very interesting that here was Davis calling Dr. Johnston during a state election board meeting. Up until that point, I didn't really know whether or not they knew each other. Clearly they do. This is all to say that I reached out to Dr. Johnston and I said, hey, can you answer my questions about any conversations you might have had with Mark Davis and or the Justice Department? In response, she said that it was a personal call. She then insulted The Guardian, one of the publications I write for, and said that I was being paranoid. So this is the level of seriousness that we're dealing with the Georgia State Election Board. And the reason that I think it's important to point that out is because they are taken very seriously by people with power in the Georgia legislature. This is because the Republican Party here in Georgia and a lot of other places has essentially been overrun by the election denial movement. All of this chaos is just leading to more chaos next year when there's tight races in congressional elections around the country and Republicans like those on the state election board, like Trump in the White House, like Mike Johnson in the House of Representatives, and a lot of other people are going to say, yeah, we don't believe those results. So the chaos that's happening right now is really just a preview of the chaos to come.